Hello and welcome back to What's Up Doc, the documentary review podcast. I am, as always, your host, Gemma Delaney. Guys, we are now on episode 8 of season 2. And remember, as always, you can follow us on all of our social media. We are at What's Up Doc podcast. So guys, today we are talking all about the brand new Netflix documentary, Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich. This one dropped on Wednesday. And look, if you follow me online, if you follow me on social media, you'll know this has been eagerly awaited. I've been waiting on this one. So, it's directed by Lisa Bryant. I've got to be honest with you, I'd never heard of her before. She has made some, true crime, made for TV stuff, but nothing I'd ever heard of before. But yeah, this documentary, has been hotly anticipated, I suppose. And, it's kind of, if you're into true crime, if you're into documentaries in general, I think this one would be right up your alley. But obviously, if you're looking at a designated kind of intended audience, I suppose it is, going to be women. It's going to be women 18 plus because of some of the strong subject matter, even, Jesus, Gemma. But realistically, anyone interested in the subject, and let's be honest, who isn't fucking interested in this subject, and with a strong stomach, because it gets graphic. It gives details. So, in terms of, I suppose, the purpose of this documentary, you're one who directed it, Lisa Bryant, the director. She started recording this documentary a year before Epstein's arrest. So really at the time, this documentary, or the purpose of this documentary, I guess, would have been to shed light on this, unbelievable story, and, the plight of the victims, the cases of the victims, because nothing much was really been fucking done to stop this guy, despite, a couple of charges been lobbed at him at this stage. Lobbed is Irish for through, by the way. But yeah, he's after having he's after been slapped with a couple of lawsuits at this stage, and he's just he's Teflon. Nothing will stick to this guy. So I suppose it's to tell the victim stories and reveal that it was looking increasingly like there is an international paedophile ring that is ran by the richest of the rich, multimillionaires and billionaires. So I think as well, the message in this documentary is how powerful people in high places, and just how powerful they are, and why and how this guy managed to fly under the radar for so long. And just really a look into this almost unbelievably fucked up world of incredible and absolute control. That's really, I suppose, it's just, you wouldn't believe it unless you saw it with your own eyes, I suppose, really, So in terms of my prior knowledge of the subject, come on, who didn't know about Jeffrey Epstein? And Jeffrey Epstein's story. It was everywhere when this story broke. And even if you didn't necessarily know the who's and the what's and the when's and the where's, you knew he was a billionaire. You knew he was supposedly a paedophile. And if you're a meme enthusiast like myself, you also knew that he didn't kill himself. I jest. But more on that later. But yeah, it gave birth to, that whole Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself meme. So in terms of, what I expected from this, like I said, if you follow me on social media, you will know I have been absolutely eagerly anticipating the release of this. I've spoken about the upcoming release on my stories at length. And so in terms of what I've been expecting is really the full bells and fucking whistles, you know, no door unopened, no detail too grisly, hard, cold facts and timelines all wrapped up in that lovely, shiny, sparkly Netflix bow that I've spoken about before. So I love the production qualities that Netflix always brings to a documentary, true crime or otherwise. But, you know, I'd loads of questions. I wanted to know how bad it was because I'll be honest with you, while I, you know, like everyone in the world had heard of Jeffrey Epstein and remember when the case broke and all that, I didn't follow it. I didn't follow it religiously in the way that I have followed some cases until he was kind of dead, really, to be honest with you. And then, you know, that brought my attention to it more so than anything. But yeah, so I wanted to know how bad it was, you know, what were the depths that this guy's shenanigans went to. I know that sounds probably a little bit morbid, I know, but like really isn't that what true crime enthusiasts want? The nitty gritty details. How far does this alleged paedophile ring go? Who was involved? Are there more famous faces, you know, than that have been disclosed in the media? Because obviously there was some people were dragged into it in the media as well, but I wanted to know, were there extras? Were there people I hadn't heard of before? Well, that I knew, famous people, but that I hadn't heard of being involved in this paedophile ring, you know? And then, you know, one of the big questions I had, and this sounds fucking awful, but I'm going to be honest here. You know, when they say underage girls, are you talking 17 or are you talking 10? You know, and look, not that either is acceptable, by the way, but like, I want clear details. And that drives me, I don't know if I'm alone in that fucking drives me mad when I'm reading an article about true crime or, you know, about paedophilia and they're talking about like, you know, underage. Like, define underage, give us the fucking age, you know, because I do think that, you know, sometimes they lob all victims under the one kind of heading and you're just left to, your imagination is left to fill in the blanks, and that's not enough, not in my opinion anyway. So I wanted specifics. And then like, in terms of the documentary itself, in terms of like, you know, the breakdown and how it's built up and all that, Jeffrey Epstein Filthy Rich is 4-hour-long episodes. So we spoke last time about 6 being the new 13. So it looks like maybe even that's being upgraded now, like, you know. That actually caught me on the hop as well, if I'm honest. I was halfway through the last episode and I was like, oh, they seem to be wrapping everything up, you know. Everything's kind of coming to an end now, and I wonder what they're going to do for the next 2 episodes and what they're going to be like. And then I just said, just double check and see, is there 6 episodes? And like, you know, there wasn't, obviously. I was like, oh fuck, it's going to go over in 15 minutes. But look, in fairness, that's better. You know, it's better to be left wanting more than to have them just drag the absolute bollocks out of it. So it's not an issue at all, to be honest. But yeah, it's 4-hour-long episodes. The 4 episodes then are broken up under 4 separate titles, as they do. So we've got The Hunting Grounds, Follow the Money, The Island, and Finding Their Voice. The first episode reminded me so much of Surviving R. Kelly. Watch it and you'll see what I mean. The parallels that appear between sexual predators, you know, their modus operandi, is sometimes actually unnerving when you've watched as many true crime stories as I have. But then I suppose you remember that they are literally at it since, you know, time began. This isn't a new problem. And, you know, they share the fucking blueprint around, you know, amongst themselves. So it begins anyway with us being introduced to Vicky Ward. So Vicky Ward is a journalist who back in 2003 was working for Vanity Fair. And she was asked to do this, like, you know, welcome to my crib kind of type piece on this multimillionaire. So the multimillionaire in question was like this Gatsby-esque figure, Jeffrey Epstein, who was notoriously private. He owned his own island where he lived down in the Virgin Islands. You know, he was friends with royalty, but no one really knew how he'd made his money, how he'd made his millions. So it was just meant to be like a fun social spread. But one of Vicky's very first sources goes, right, you need to talk to this girl who had a very unpleasant experience while working for him. And he actually abused her sister, who at the time was underage. So these now women are almost terrified to speak to her, like will not speak to her at all. But after a lot of kind of coercing and reassurance, she finally talks them around, and they do. And they talk us through and give us our first insight into what his modus operandi was. So they go on to explain how Epstein managed to get them a loan under the guise of patronage. So, you know, one was approached at her college graduation show. She was doing art and bought a couple of her paintings, and then, you know, it went from there. So, you know, he said he was going to pay for their education, that he'd pay for like educational trips, and they talk about as well how he abused them both, and that his girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, took part in this abuse as well, and sometimes instigated it. Often instigated, actually, in fact. And that they had reported it to the police at the time, and nothing was ever done. So this is back in like 2000, or sorry, this is like back in 1995, and obviously Vicky Ward is researching this piece in 2003. So, you know, a period of time has passed since the abuse took place. So Vicky, being the journalist that she is, goes to the editor of Vanity Fair and goes, oh my God, this guy, like, this is serious. He has serious skeletons in the closet. She tells him everything she's uncovered, runs the piece, you know, writes the piece, and when the issue of the magazine comes out, it's another article talking about how fantastic Epstein is with her name on it. Now, the editor of Vanity Fair disputes this course of events, but look, sure, you know yourself. The man has power. And after that, it goes on to talk about how he used underprivileged neighborhoods near his residence down in Palm Beach. So they're saying like Palm Beach, you know, in your mind is like celebrities and multimillionaires, billionaires row and all that. But just across the bridge, West Palm Beach is actually quite impoverished. It's quite, you know, working class and downwards. And so, yeah, how basically he got underage girls in that underprivileged, I should say, area of West Palm Beach to recruit their friends in exchange for money, in what they kind of aptly describe as an underage pyramid scheme. So, like, he is preying in the local schools, a la R. Kelly. The second episode then, that follows the abuse, but it also shows how he came to be so wealthy in the first place, because as I said, you know, it dips into that in episode 1. How has this guy made his money to begin with? Nobody knows, hence that kind of Gatsby-like quality about him. So yeah, it dips its toe in there. How did he get his wealth in the first place? So like, this is where the story gets really fucking interesting, in my opinion. Not that it's not interesting for this, but again, this is information I didn't know. So this fucker, like, he was the ultimate con artist. He never even graduated college, but bullshitted and lied and pretended that he had, and had all these accolades and all these degrees on his CV, and just lied his way up the career ladder until he finds himself in the favour of an American billionaire, Les Wexner. Now, I'd never heard that name, before Jeffrey Epstein and the case, I did hear then, obviously his name was often tied, their names were often tied together. But Les Wexner is of Victoria's Secret fame and Abercrombie and Fitch as well. So this guy is like billionaire. But what I didn't realise, like I knew the two were in cahoots, or I knew like I had happened on articles where, you know, the two names were mentioned together and that they were clearly buddies or whatever. But what this documentary alludes to, and seemingly like this isn't new news, like this is kind of well known if you're moving in the right circles, is that the two of them were having a gay relationship. So this is why they were so close, and that Epstein was referred to as the boyfriend. That was like his kind of, you know, behind his back. That's what he was kind of called, the boyfriend. So yeah, this was, like I said, this was really well known if you moved in the right circle, seemingly. But like I even tried to Google that and very little came up about it. So that's kind of a revelation from the documentary. But yeah, as a result then of this intimate, you know, close relationship, gay relationship, allegedly, Epstein was able to swindle Wexner out of millions upon millions. Now, it doesn't give specifics because obviously they can't know. But again, it's kind of alluded to throughout this documentary. When you watch it, you'll see what I mean. It's alluded to the fact that Epstein would he would encourage you to, sorry about this, he'd encourage people to do kind of maybe not strictly legal things, and then he would record it, or he would, you know, have some other kind of evidence against them and blackmail them effectively. And like I said, you'll see this time and time again through the documentary, whether it be with his victims in terms of like photographs, and then, you know, they talk about how like every room and every house that he owned was rigged with cameras, like toilets, bathrooms, bedrooms, closets, everywhere was rigged, so that if you know, did something inappropriate or something that maybe he was even, you know, egging you on to do, he then had it against you. He had it on tape. So it doesn't say what happened, because obviously they don't know, but whatever happened anyway, he was able to swindle him out of millions. He was able to get power of attorney as well. He got him to sign over power of attorney, which is fucking mental. So maybe that is as a result of their relationship. I don't know. But there is, like I said, this reoccurring theme of blackmail and having one over people throughout this documentary. So whether, I don't know, he was secretly filming your man doing something illegal, and then as a result managed to get him to sign over a power of attorney or something. But yeah, it's like, it's not hard to see how Epstein got away with this shit for so fucking long, is it really? You know, and you're only 2 episodes in at this stage. And then, so the third episode, The Island, my favourite episode out of the 4, and in my opinion, it's absolutely fucked up. They're all fucked up, but this is exponentially fucked up. So I was on my seat for the whole hour of this, like on the edge of it. So The Island talks about his home, obviously that place down in the Virgin Islands that we mentioned briefly there earlier, and how effectively he's out of American jurisdiction, on an island privately owned by himself. Anybody who goes onto the island can't get off without his say so. And where, you know, there was just these orgies that would take place with kids. Like, let's stop calling them underage women. They're babbies. They're children. So this episode is interesting for another reason, in that there's a lot of names dropped in this. So you may have heard some of them. You might have heard, you know, Prince Andrew's affiliation with him, or alleged affiliation with him. But other names are dropped in there as well. Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, Harvey Weinstein, of fucking course, and Chris Tucker. Now, their names are dropped in the context of a trip to Africa, and the victim who drops in their names never suggests that they took part in anything lewd or sexual. And in fact, she says that Epstein himself didn't actually do anything sexual with her on that trip. But these are the kind of people, these are the circles he's moving in. And these are the people that, okay, right, fuck Kevin Spacey and fuck Harvey Weinstein, but, and fuck Prince Andrew. But, like, they're meant to be sensible, intelligent people. And you kind of, I guess from that aspect, I know, obviously that Prince Andrew was the only one who was ever accused of engaging in sex acts with a minor, bar Epstein and his former lawyer as well. Bill Clinton's name has been thrown around, but never in actual, there's nobody ever after coming forward and saying that he did something to them. And not on that island anyway. But it does make you think, even if they weren't taking part, they were obviously friends of his. Like, how much did they know? How much were they turning a blind eye to, So that's probably my favourite of the four episodes. The final episode then, it talks about the scandal finally getting some kind of traction. So throughout the documentary series, there are efforts to bring this guy to justice and to hold him accountable. There's multiple failed lawsuits, but I suppose the final episode then really focuses on the scandal finally getting some traction in the wake of the Me Too movement. And Harvey Weinstein, like I said, is mentioned in this documentary, and by all means it seems like they were in cahoots. And really, I suppose the nail in the coffin for Jeffrey Epstein was the raid on his New York home that uncovered just a plethora of child porn, which led to his arrest and subsequent murder, suicide, whatever side you fall into. I think, though, personally, this documentary alludes to the fact, it does touch into the suicide thing as well. There's a little bit there where, it shows the brother getting, an independent forensic dude to come in and assess the autopsy and all that jazz. And there's some funny breakage in his neck, which apparently wouldn't take part if you hung yourself. It'd only take part if, somebody pressed down on a noose around your neck from behind. So that's where they're coming from. But I think for the most part, the documentary backs up that he probably did just kill himself, and look, let's face it, he had loads of fucking reason to, but yeah, look, I watched this in a sitting. Like I said, 4-hour-long episodes. Anybody who's enthusiastic about true crime and documentaries could hammer that out of the park, no bother to you whatsoever. It's that kind of documentary, I didn't want to stop watching, and you probably won't either, I would imagine. I needed to know it all, and it drops some just, god awful, heartbreaking bombshells. So, like I said, it talks about how he would coast high schools for victims, or Kelly, it talks about how the abuse would start with a massage, Harvey Weinstein. But I think for me personally, and look, if you don't want any spoilers, stay away now. I think for me personally, the what a cunt moment was when one of the victims talks about how for Epstein's birthday one year, a friend of his bought him 3 12-year-old French girls from their parents. Bought, you heard me right. How they were flown to his home, They stayed overnight unsupervised. Not that it'd be fucking alright if they came supervised. They were been flown for a reason, and then they were flown back to France the very next day. And I don't know why this affected me so much. Like, look, the whole thing is fucking tough, but she said that they didn't speak any English. And I just, oh Christ, I just thought, like, you know, babies in a strange country where they don't even speak the fucking language. And yeah, I don't know. That one really struck a chord for that obvious reason, but for another reason as well. It's something that if you haven't seen it, is discussed in the documentary The Disappearance of Madeleine McCann. So they talk about that, how, you know, this is happening. There are, you know, people like Epstein who are very private, multimillionaires and billionaires, who are literally flying their private jets into, you know, impoverished parts of the world, paying parents for the use of their children, or actually just outright buying them, like human trafficking, buying them to keep. And that's something that's alluded to at the end of Madeleine McCann, that maybe she was stolen to order by, you know, some billionaire paedophile. And like, you can't lie to yourself. You can't admit it's, you know, it's not happening. It's fucking happening. So like, who knows? And like I said, the fact that they have these private jets, they can just fly them around the world undetected, you know. It's fucking mental. But look, you know, it's a brilliant documentary. It's absolutely, it's a banger. It has everything you'd want, except, I suppose, the justice. Unfortunately, you know, as we know how the story goes, he killed himself. They never got justice. So it also talks about in the documentary how, like, 2 days before his suicide, he transferred all of his money into his brother's name. Like, what a fucking prick. Like, oh, Jesus Christ. So, like, whatever side of the fence you stand on, it does, that to me is evidence that he did kill himself. Like, he knew what he was at. If he does that 2 days before he's about to kill himself, he's obviously doing it with purpose, and he's obviously doing it to make sure that the victims don't get a fucking penny. And it just seems that up to the very last minute, he was a conniving bastard with absolutely no regret, you know. So look, that is it, guys. That is Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich. I know you'll be more than likely soaking up the rays this bank holiday weekend. It's set to be an absolute scorcher, but do yourself a favour and stick on this documentary at some point. It's one of the best in a while. So guys, as always, look, it flies by. I don't know where the time goes. We are at the end of episode 8 of season 2 of What's Up Doc, the documentary review podcast. So guys, as always, if you like what we do, if you like the cut of me jib, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a share, give us a mention, subscribe, and review on iTunes. For the love of God, you don't realize what a difference it makes. It really does. But guys, look, that's all the time we have got for this episode. As always, I have been your host, Gemma Delaney. We will catch you next time. Good night, good luck, God bless.
If dog people made dog food, it wouldn't be sold in a 50-pound bag in the hardware aisle by the shoe polish. It would actually be food. It would be made with real, fresh meat and veggies gently cooked to preserve their nutritional value. You know, like food. The Farmer's Dog was created by dog people who cook and deliver fresh, healthy food. Try the Farmer's Dog and get fresh, pre-portioned meals tailored to your dog's needs. Tell us about your dog, build your plan, and get 50% off at thefarmersdog.com/listen. That's thefarmersdog.com/listen.